Welcome to Abundant Life Podcast. Get ready to be inspired. Now, let's get into today's episode. Here's your host, Marcia Jones.
This title, this subject, is not just something that I am going to teach on. It is something that I have experienced. So when I tell you that I know it all too well, I really do. And my heart goes out to people who are suffering from the victim mentality. The victim mentality is a stronghold, and it's a vicious stronghold because it has the ability to literally change the way you see yourself, the way you see life. And when I say life, I mean all aspects of life. It ruins people. It will cause you to lose relationships. It could cost you careers. It has the ability to really stagnate an individual. So anyone who's suffering from a victim complex, victim mentality, the victim stronghold needs to be delivered and needs to be healed. For a number of years, I fell prey to this mentality. I felt sorry for myself. I was a loner. My emotions were all over the place. I was depressed. I felt like nobody understood my pain, my hurt. I was just very miserable. I had been a victim of emotional abuse, verbal abuse, rejection. And I just got to a place where I blamed everyone for my state except myself. And that's sort of the recurring theme for people who are suffering from this type of stronghold. This mentality is that they see the wrong in others. They become very critical of others, but they don't see the wrong that they're doing to themselves, to their environment. And you can't have abundant life if your soul needs healing. True wealth is not all in the physical. True wealth is within your mind, your will, and your emotions. When your mind and your will and your emotions are not where they need to be, it has a great effect on everything. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. One of the things I suffered from was looking for happiness in someone else. And when people have the victim mentality, they tend to do that. They feel like their happiness is based upon what somebody else is saying or what someone else is doing. And of course, I had to get to the place where I had to understand that I was in charge of that. I had to make the decision to be happy. No one else was my husband couldn't do that for me. You can't always have control over what happens to you in this life. But you can always make sure that your response to your life's disappointments and pain and hurt don't cause you to check out of life. So many times I just checked out of life. I was so depressed that I didn't want to do anything but just stay in bed. I didn't want to call anyone. I didn't want to be involved with anything. I became an emotional wreck. I was very impulsive. Does this sound familiar to any of you? It seemed like everything I did was just based upon a poor decision. It was like I couldn't make a good decision for anything. And all of these things really started when I was in my late teen years. Excuse me. In my late teen years, that was when, around 17, 18 years old, that was when this whole thing sort of began to spiral out of control. And it just, started off as just a depressive state, a state of just feeling depressed. And it grew into a stronghold. And that's when I began to carry the victim mentality on a different level, And then after I got married and had kids, it just really escalated because my husband and we started having all types of problems right after we got married. And so I got to a point where I thought I would just spend the rest of my life as a depressed and emotionally impaired person. I just pretty much lost my way. I remember that I had to go to my daughter's school for a meeting. And, the teacher sort of, she tried to prep me for the meeting, trying to, let me know, these people, they're difficult. We were talking, the purpose of the meeting was to talk about getting speech therapy for our youngest daughter. And our youngest daughter had been diagnosed with autism. And so we were there to discuss the therapy for her because the school didn't want to provide the therapy and whatnot. And so it was just a really big deal. And when the meeting started, everything the teacher said to me, like, it just went out the window somewhere. It's like, the song, your body's here with me, but your mind is on the other side of town. That's where I was. I mean, it's like I heard those people talking, but I was just somewhere else, and I'm sure she could see it in my face. And I'm sure she was thinking to herself, like, what is going on with this woman? Is she high or something? Because I had this blank look all over my face. It's like I was literally letting them know, like, I really don't care to be here right now. You'd be surprised at how selfish you become when you're dealing with this type of mentality. I'm sure the teacher was like, wow, what happened to her? 1 minute, it was like I had her attention, and then this meeting starts and she just checked out. Well, my brain was just fried. It was fried. I was depressed. When people are depressed, if they fall deep enough into the depression, they start getting like brain fog. And that was what I was experiencing in that moment. A victim mentality it's an indicator of a soul that's locked down by a demonic stronghold. And the stronghold makes a person live submerged in their problems. It's hard to go forward into your life. It's hard for you to go forward because you're just living in yesterday. All you think about is what you couldn't do. All you think about is what somebody has said. It's nothing but stagnation and hindrance. And, I often say that this type of mentality makes you look foolish. It really does. I touched on that a little bit earlier when I said that it affects your work, your relationships. I mean, if you're in ministry, it's going to affect that as well. It affects every aspect of your life because you can easily become offended when you have this mentality. You're self-righteous because you can only see, like I said before, you can only see the wrong that's been done to you. You generally disregard the wrong that you're doing. In other words, you give yourself a pass, but you're very critical of others. That's a victim mentality. People feel like they have to walk on eggshells around you because remember, your emotions are off center. And if you carry this thing a long time, it's just going to open the door for all kinds of craziness. And that's what I had to endure. The dysfunction just continues to grow. And when you have these demonic strongholds, they have to be confronted. I'm not saying to you that if you have pain, hurt, rejection, trauma, that your pain isn't valid. I am not saying that. I don't want anyone to think that I'm trying to say that, what I went through or what anyone else has gone through or is going through in their life isn't valid. Yes, whatever you've gone through, it's quite valid, but you cannot allow where you've been and what you've gone through to tie you down and stagnate you. You have to do what's necessary to bring yourself up out of the pit of despair. The first step is to acknowledge that you have an issue. You got to be honest with yourself. That's what I had to do. I had to be honest with myself. And I had to face the pain, the hurt, the abuse, the trauma. I had to face up to that. I have never met a person who's never been through anything. I've never met someone like that. But when you are the one who's feeling like the victim, you feel like there's nobody else like you. There's nobody else that's been through anything. And I have to say that one of the things that helped me as well was when I began to meet other people, and those other people had been victims. And many of their stories were far worse than mine. And I'm not saying that their situation was more valid than mine. Their pain, their issues were their traumas were more valid than mine. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that when I had to accept the fact that even though I had been through a lot, there were other people who had been through far worse. Um, I have been emotionally and verbally abused, but I met a woman whose husband literally tried to kill her. That really helped me to be more grateful that I hadn't experienced something like that. And, you know, I understand that, some traumas are worse than others. Because that can be the case. Obviously, there are levels of severity, and that has to be acknowledged. But regardless, deliverance and healing are what are necessary in order for anyone to be set free from the demonic stronghold that is the victim mentality. And the first step is acknowledging that you have these issues that have come to you as a result of the pain, as a result of the abuse, the trauma, the hurt, the rejection. That's the first step. You have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I have a problem. I've suffered. I've been through some really difficult things, and I need help. I need healing. And what helped me was acknowledging that and then seeking relationship with Father God. I had to stop looking at others, and I started looking at myself. Healing and deliverance start with a person being self-aware. And I was aware that I had problems and issues. I was aware that I was broken and that I was hurting and that I needed the Lord more than ever. I needed to grow in relationship with him because he and he alone could heal me and deliver me from all of the bondage, from all the pain, all of the hurt that I was carrying. And so as I started partnering with the Holy Spirit, as I started fasting and praying, my life started to change. And as my life changed, my desire started to change. You cannot partner with God. You can't begin to draw closer to him and things don't change in your life. As you seek God, as you desire better for yourself in God, you will see that change occurring. If you draw close to him, he will draw close to you. The Bible teaches us that where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is what? Freedom. Everyone's journey is different. Everyone's level of trauma is different, but God is always the same. And I'm telling you, as he began to tell me who I was and showed me that I had purpose, everything changed. Knowing who you are changes everything. So, the reason so many people are carrying a lot of baggage is because they have not surrendered their lives to Jesus. His burden is truly light and his yoke is easy. He gives you strength to endure, to stand, and to have hope. I partnered with the Holy Ghost and he healed and delivered me from years of bondage. I am not a victim. I am no longer facilitating that vicious stronghold. I am free. Now, some of you may be thinking, are you telling me that your freedom came, that the Lord healed you, that he delivered you, and you had to do, this fasting? Yeah, I had to do a lot of fasting. I'm not telling you I started on a Monday and then on Friday, everything was just peachy keen. No. It was a process. It is a process. Healing and deliverance can be a process, depending on how long you've been carrying the baggage. And for me, it was years. So no one should expect that if you've been carrying a lot of pain and hurt, and you have this stronghold, this demonic stronghold, that this thing, it didn't crop up overnight. It's probably not going to just leave overnight. You're going to have to fast. You're going to have to pray. You're going to have to partner with the Spirit of God. You're going to have to listen to what he's telling you to do. You're going to have to be open to what he's directing you to do. You can't lean on your understanding, but you've got to trust in him with all your heart. True healing It doesn't come from a therapist either. Because I know, I can just feel people going like, well, you didn't have to do any therapy. I don't have a problem with therapy. I am not against therapy. But even therapists know that you're not going to be healed from psychotherapy. That's talk therapy. I used to work in psych. I used to work as a psych nurse. I did that for about 7 years. So I understand psychotherapy. I understand talk therapy, but it's not there to heal the individual. That's not what therapy does. Therapy can help you to cope, but in 7 years, I didn't meet one patient that came through the doors and said, I've been healed of the trauma. No, not one patient ever said that. So I'm not against therapy. I am not saying that I would never go to therapy, but if you are going to use therapy, and that's fine, make sure that you have sought the Lord for deliverance and healing, or that you are seeking Him for it, because therapy alone isn't going to do it for you. It's just not going to do it for you. You have to make the decision to give your burdens to Jesus, obey Him, and by doing what's necessary, it's going to help you to get through the process and get on the other side victorious. You're going to go from victim to victorious if you put Jesus in the equation. If you take Jesus out of the equation, you'll find a great therapist. They'll give you some great coping skills, but you're going to have to keep going back to that therapist for the rest of your life, and you will not be free, because a therapist is not Jesus. Jesus is a healer. I am living proof that a relationship with God, an obedient and surrendered life, yields wholeness. When a person is suffering from demonic strongholds in relation to trauma, and they start seeing themselves as a victim, the only way to come out of that is through Jesus Christ. He is the healer. It is because of His goodness, because of His grace, because of His healing power, that I can testify today that I am not who I was 5 years ago. I am not who I was 10, 15 years ago. I am a person who knows who she is. I am a person who understands that it is the desire of God for me to live a victorious life. I have a purpose. I have a calling. I wouldn't be on here today if I didn't believe that. I would not be on here today seeking to inspire and transform the minds of the people who are suffering from this victim mentality and who need that healing and who need that deliverance. I have learned so very much by allowing God to be priority in my life. By no means am I trying to say that I'm a perfect person. I get everything right all the time. I never miss the mark. I'm not saying that. I live for Jesus. I didn't say I was Jesus. There's a difference. But I know what relationship with Him will do for you. I know what loving Him and seeking Him will do for you. And the same thing that He's done for me, He's done for so many people. He's done for so many people, and He'll do it for even more. But you've got to be open to allow Him to do it. My journey to healing and deliverance may not look like yours, but what I'm saying to you is that apart from Jesus, it's not going to happen. I did a lot of fasting. I did a lot of prayer, a lot of crying. I'm still a work in progress. Like I said, I'm not saying that I'm a perfect person now. I have no issues at all. I'm not saying that. I'd be lying if I said that. Deliverance is a lifelong thing. There's so many things that all of us have to have worked out of us, But what I am saying to you today is that the things that could have stagnated me, the things that could have ruined my life, that stronghold that was really stagnating me, had me depressed, had me an emotional wreck. I was impulsive. I was constantly making bad decisions. I'm not that person anymore. By the grace of God, by the goodness of God, I'm not that person anymore. And I'm so glad that I don't use my past pain and trauma as a crutch or as an excuse to not be all that God has called me to, because a lot of people do that. They stay in that place of victimization, and that stronghold just literally gets so big and so bad that they're not progressing, they're regressing. Because when you want to live in yesterday, that's what's going to happen. And so after a while, they'll start literally blaming other people for the fact that they're not progressing. And another thing that happens too is unforgiveness. I had to learn to forgive. That's a big one right there. Remember what I said? I said I grew in relationship with the Lord, and I came to a place of surrender and obedience. That required forgiveness. We all need forgiveness. And so knowing that you need forgiveness, you must be open. You must be open to forgive others. So that's a big one. You've got to be able to forgive other people. You need forgiveness. You got to be able to give it. You know, I see it this way. If you don't forgive, it's not going to slow down the people that you are angry with, people that you've been hurt by. It's not going to slow down their lives. They're going to keep living. And you may be harboring unforgiveness towards these people. And these people may have gone to the Lord, asked Him to forgive them, surrendered their life to Him, gone on with their lives. And you're sitting in a corner somewhere holding on to what they've said and what they've done. It's a waste of time to do that. I understand somebody hurt you. I understand things have been said. Pain and trauma and hurt, like I said before, it can affect anyone. It has affected most people. There's dysfunction in most families. There's dysfunction in all different segments of life in the world. Being rich does not mean, if someone is rich, it doesn't mean they cannot be in a position where they've never suffered trauma of pain, hurt, rejection. It doesn't matter what someone looks like, whether you're from the good side of the tracks, the bad side of the good side or the wrong side of the tracks. It doesn't matter. Pain is pain. But at some point, if you're going to live in this life and you're going to prosper, really prosper, it's going to start on the inside of you. So you've got to be willing to say, I am not where I've been, and I'm not what I've gone through. I'm so much more. And my prayer for anyone carrying a victim stronghold is that you will seek Jesus and receive healing and deliverance and be free and live the abundant life that He came to give you. Thanks for joining today. Be blessed.